Hello and welcome to the latest TES web chat. My name's Sarah Canane, I'm Editorial Content Manager for TES Resources, and I'm delighted to be broadcasting live from the Isle of Wight. And given this island's proud sailing heritage, I'm very pleased to be joined by world-renowned sailor Dame Ellen MacArthur. Hello.
Hi there.
Hello. Dame Ellen, of course, first hit the headlines in 2001 when, at the age of 24, she came second in the Vendée Globe solo round-the-world sailing race. And in February 2005, she became a world record breaker after single-handedly navigating around the world in what was then the fastest time ever recorded. She was appointed Dame Commander of the British Empire the day after finishing her round-the-world race in recognition of her achievement. She retired from competitive racing in 2009 to focus on a new passion, sustainability, and a year later she set up the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and it's that we're here to talk to her about today. So Dame Ellen, would you be able to just start off by telling us a bit about the foundation and its aims?
The foundation was created in September 2010. And the goal of the foundation is to accelerate the transition towards a circular economy. And that's based on the principle that our current economy, a linear economy, is based on taking something out of the ground, making something out of it, and at the end we throw it away. But in a world where materials are becoming increasingly more expensive, where we've seen a century of price declines in those materials that we make all our products out of, a century of price declines are raised literally in 10 years, with 3 billion new consumers coming online by 2050. We're looking at a circular economy as a different model for innovation, creativity and manufacturing. So when you look at how things are made today, they're made to be maybe cycled a little bit at the end, but within a circular economy, you design for disassembly, you design for remanufacturing, and you design so you can recover those materials and put them once again into the next cycle. And actually on that note, we produced an economic report into the economic rationale for that transition, which we launched at the World Economic Forum in January of this year. And it showed that there was an economic advantage of $630 billion US,
wow,
the EU economy alone, based on that transition. So it's a significant economic advantage for Europe, and we believe also for the world in changing the economic model.
And with that in mind, why don't we have a circular economy at the moment? What's stopping it from becoming a reality around the world?
I think the way our economy's developed over the years, and this is really since the Industrial Revolution, is that when I look back to my great-grandfather's life, and he was alive until I was 11 years old, and when he was born, there were only 25 cars on the road in the whole world, anywhere. And now, here now, and okay, I'm 36 and he's long gone, but there are now 600 million cars in the world, and as we develop, we use more materials, we use more energy, and we process a lot of stuff, and currently that stuff isn't designed to cycle. But when you have so many new people coming in the world and we're using more and more materials, ultimately you reach a point where materials become more expensive, which we're seeing. We see that there's more volatility in those material prices than we've ever seen before in history. And actually, for an economy of the future, we need to use these resources in a different way, which is why the circular economy now is starting to come into play. And it's not brand new. It's been around for some time. There are many companies doing this already, remanufacturing, redesigning, looking at different materials, both in the technical aspects, such as plastic and metals, but also in the biological aspects, such as cycling food waste, human waste, so that can go back to the farms to create fertiliser for the food and farming sector. So there's these new industries coming along. There are several who are doing this already. It's not entirely new, but our economic climate is changing so much that we need to look at different models for the future, because those 25 cars have now turned into many more, as have the other products that we have.
Okay. And quite a lot of our viewers, I think, will probably know you best as a sailor. Can you explain how you came to sort of found a foundation about about this subject?
Well, for me, first of all, I never ever thought that I would stop sailing, because since I was 4 years old, my dream was to sail around the world. I had absolutely no idea how to make that a reality, but one day I was going to sail around the world. And when you have that goal, somehow you can make that goal happen, because you know that every decision you take in your life will take you one step closer, however small or however large, to that goal. But through that sailing, through racing around the world, through going off on a boat for 3 months, taking with you everything that you will need for your survival, that's food, that's diesel, that's anything from charging the batteries to your first aid kit to spares, everything goes with you, to the point that actually in the Southern Ocean you're 2,500 miles away from the nearest town. So if you run out of something, there is no more.
Yeah.
You can't stop off and get some more diesel or stop off and get some more clothes. What you have is all you have. And you realise so clearly the definition of the word finite. And never had I ever translated that to our life on land, not once. I was in my dream world of sailing around the world, and I wanted to do nothing else. But the moment I realised our world was no different, I had to start learning.
And when did that point come for you?
Really, it began to dawn on me whilst I was at sea during the last round the world. Many of the pieces that I wrote actually referred to resources and referred to, this is all I have. And I was aware of it, but had never connected that to land. It was after the finish of the round the world I started to realise that this is the same. Our world is no different. We have finite resources, yet our economy is totally dependent on using them, but using them in that linear system, using them in that linear way, whereby ultimately they're going to get more and more and more and more expensive till we can't afford to use those resources anymore. And what I felt very strongly when I started to learn and speak to scientists and experts were that actually when we try to look for solutions around resources and energy in the future, the solution was always based on doing less, on using less, on travelling less. It was always, let's do a little bit less, let's make a little bit more with a little bit less, and let's make it last maybe a little bit longer. But that doesn't work as a solution. It doesn't give you that one goal to aim for. It just buys you time. And although using less is vital in the transition to what? Where are we actually trying to get to? And if we can get to a state of a circular economy, which is what I started to learn through experts, through scientists, from education experts to CEOs, actually if you can change the system within which we live so that everything's designed for disassembly, for remanufacturing, so it sits in either the technical or the biological cycle, and we can do that process that using renewable energy, we have an economy that can run for 1,000 years. There's no restrictions to the economy. And that's such an amazing platform for innovation, for creativity, for rethinking and redesigning, that in the work that the foundation does within education and within business, because we work in those two areas with communication spanning the two, it's just a platform for innovation. It's a platform for rethinking. It's a framework for thinking differently about some of the challenges, turning them immediately into opportunities. And that's just a fascinating space to work in.
Okay. And the foundation has released educational resources available on the TES. Why do you think it's important to teach school children about the circular economy at that sort of young age?
Well, when we set up the foundation, we knew we'd work in education and business, and we asked many questions around those two areas. We felt that education needed to be linked to business, and not business as in businesses, but jobs for the future, procurement, all those different elements that you have to take into account when you're looking at a future economy, and ultimately they will be the jobs of the future. So business was one aspect. Within education, we felt that 14 to 19 was crucial, and higher education also crucial. Higher education from a learning perspective, but also from a research perspective, and 14 to 19 just because there is an amazing opportunity to redesign the future. It's incredible. There's so many choices to be made from materials science, reverse logistics, different business models, marketing. The circular economy encompasses so much. It's such an opportunity that really, if we're going to change our economy, we need every young person leaving education realising there's an opportunity out there, an opportunity to be creative and innovative. And so since the launch of the foundation, with our team of experts here and working with organisations outside of the foundation, we've put together resources which we're launching this September. We have launched this September. I have some of them here in front of me in design and technology, in science, in STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering and maths, so that young people can put the circular economy into practice and realise the opportunities.
Okay, and I apologise for breaking the flow of this conversation, but I have been informed that you're moving slightly out of shot. Okay. So if we just move over, because people don't want to, as I said before, people don't want to see me, they'd like to see you. So that's a wee bit better, I think. Jan from the International School of Geneva has got in touch. Hello,
Jan.
He says this is a great idea and he thinks it would work equally well in schools outside the UK. Is this something that you're planning to tackle in the immediate future? Is it something you're doing already?
Yeah. Our goal at the foundation was to produce these resources for the UK to begin with, to pilot and test them. Working in education, you'll know that there's a long process involved in producing materials, piloting, testing them. We work with Pathfinder schools here in the UK. Now we've launched the materials to see how they go within schools, how the interdisciplinary learning works. So our goal was to produce the materials here, to trial them and test them here. Now we've got the materials out there, we're actively looking for partnerships in other countries to translate the material into different languages, to make them culturally specific, and to take these materials to as many countries as possible, because the circular economy isn't exclusive to the EU or any region of the world. It's a global opportunity to do things differently. So absolutely, you get in touch with the foundation.
And Linda has emailed us, and she wants to know how a circular economy would affect job creation. Would it increase employment?
That's a really interesting question, Linda. When we produced our economic report, which we worked on with McKinsey, the management consultants, one of the questions we asked was, what effect will the circular economy have on employment? And we believe, and we're in the process of working in more depth on this, but we believe that the circular economy will create more regionalised employment. If you take the case study, for example, here in the UK of the Ricoh plant, where they remanufacture printers and photocopiers, they employ 800 people on one site, 600 of whom are employed solely in the remanufacturing of printers and photocopiers. And one will arrive in that unit, they'll remanufacture it, and it will go back out of the door with the same warranty as a new printer or photocopier. So there are these examples of products that are made elsewhere, but are actually remanufactured here in the UK. Another example would be Renault in France, where there's a remanufacturing plant for engines. So many of the Renault engines from France will go into this plant. The gearboxes or the engines will be remanufactured, and that employs hundreds of people in an area just outside Paris. And that's just the remanufacturing physical work. There's also the design work, there's the reverse logistics. So how do you get all the products back? The different business models. There's jobs involved in every different aspect of the circular economy. So we don't have all the answers, but we also feel that companies who start to work along circular economy lines are more resilient. They're less exposed to price hikes. If you take your average European car manufacturer in the last 12 months, they've seen a price increase in their raw material costs, so what they have to buy to make the cars, of 500 million euros. And you kind of ask, so what will the future model be? What will car manufacturers do in the future? Because those prices aren't going to come all the way back down to where they were 5-10 years ago, because we've got 3 billion new consumers coming online. So maybe actually in the future, many vehicles will be remanufactured. Maybe you won't buy the car. You'll just pay for the performance of the car, a bit like you do on a mobile phone contract. You pay over a long period of time to have the use of that phone. And actually, when the iPhone 6, 7, 8, 9 comes out, we don't want to keep our 4. We want the performance. We don't need that old technology. If they're designed to be remanufacturable or upgradable, then actually that starts to change the landscape.
And that actually follows on quite nicely to a question that Rachel has emailed to ask us. And she wants to know about how receptive you found businesses to be to this concept. You mentioned a couple of examples there, such as Renault. Are many businesses picking this up now as a way of working?
That's a really interesting question, Rachel. Actually, when we went out to find funding for the foundation, this is now about 3 years ago, we talked to businesses about this different model, this different economic model, talking about the future journey of the company, what the long-term strategy of the company was. These people in decision-making positions, they know raw materials are getting more expensive. They know they're paying more for raw materials. They can see that happening. They can see that changing. And they can't really see a change in that with new consumers coming online across the world. So I think there's a real realisation within business that we're in a changing world. I think we're all aware of this. But what the circular economy does is it offers a framework, a coherent framework, which allows the company to be innovative and creative, which says actually if we can cycle our materials, both technical and biological, if we can design for disassembly, if we can remanufacture, then there's a great opportunity for growth for our company. There's a security of jobs within our company, and there's also an opportunity for creativity and innovation. This isn't just about kind of keeping things as they are. It's about saying how creative can we be to design this car to be entirely disassemblable? What parts will be technical? What parts will be biological? How can we feed into the reverse logistics sector with regards to food and farming? Maybe parts of cars will become fertiliser for farms. You get this whole big opportunity unlocked. And businesses are looking for future solutions. Businesses are looking for, in some cases, ways out of the current situation. And we found business to be hugely receptive. And actually, an important point on that is the framing and the way we communicate this within the foundation and within all the material that we produce, is that we talk about a different economy. Our current economy is linear. We know that can't run in the long term. So how could a circular economy work? And what we find within schools and boardrooms with people that we speak to is we talk about a different economy. We talk about redesign. We talk about innovation, materials science, rethinking. And you bring the whole company along, or you bring the whole classroom along with that narrative. Because whether that young person wants to become a Formula 1 car designer or whether that young person wants to go on and study environmental science, it's relevant because you're talking about a different model for design and innovation and creativity. Different way of thinking, systems thinking.
I'm going to move on now to a question from an 8-year-old who is fast becoming a TES chat legend, and regular watchers should know that I am, of course, talking about Maximus, who's asking about sustainable energy. He wants to know if you have an opinion on wind turbines. If they make nice, clean energy, why do you think people object to them so much? And how else can you make clean energy inside the context of the circular economy?
Hi, Maximus. Nice to talk to you. First of all, just energy within a circular economy, the final part of the question. What we find when you change the system, because the circular economy isn't about saying how can we replace the energy use of today with renewables or with future-proof energy, as you could call it, energy that we know we can have in the future. You find when you change the system, if, for example, you remanufacture an engine rather than make one from new, if you remanufacture a washing machine rather than make one from new, you can still upgrade it in that process, but that process of remanufacturing uses much less energy than making one from new. I was recently at the Renault remanufacturing plant just outside Paris, and those parts that leave that factory have 75% less energy in them as a new engine or a new gearbox. Because actually you're not taking that raw material from across the world, turning it into sheet metal or molten metal, turning it into an engine part, and then that engine gets sold, and then that company doesn't see that again. So the energy level actually decreases. And as for wind turbines, I mean, would I rather see a hill with or without one? I'd rather see one without one. But actually, we need energy. We all need energy. We're using energy so we can have this web chat today. And, you know, if the lights all went off tomorrow and we had to find out how to create energy, I think we'd have a mixture of all sorts of generation of energy very, very quickly.
And how can teachers teach the circular economy in the classroom? What does the Ellen MacArthur Foundation provide anything beyond the resources on the TES site?
We have many resources, as I've mentioned, the 700 resources which launched in September, which are everything from multimedia to these actual documents themselves. This is the DNT, this is chemistry. We also have the Future of Energy, which we developed with National Grid. Now, this is all material to use within the classroom, but we have a group of field officers who work around the United Kingdom to take our materials into schools and help teachers understand how to use the materials and how to teach on the subject of the circular economy. And we've got a series of events. I actually have a list here, which I'm not going to read all of them out, but they're spaced out October, November, December, right across the UK. And they're all on our website, which is ellenmacarthurfoundation.org, and /events takes you to the list of events that are going on across the UK. And if you go onto the Foundation website, there's a very clear banner there for education, and you can see all those resources that we've worked on over the last 2 years as a team to put up there for this year.
How long do you think it would take to get a circular economy in place?
That's an interesting one. That's the big question. How long would it take to build a circular economy? It'll take years. Now, how far are we along that line? We've done this much of going this far. But what we begin to see are businesses changing. There are many case studies out there of companies doing this already. There are many elements of design out there already. There are manufacturers looking at bags that dissolve in water which have more value than pure water because there's nutrients within that water. There are all sorts of elements happening now. I think the key to the circular economy is education, and having young people leaving education, 14 to 19 and HE, seeing there's a different way of doing things, seeing there's a massive opportunity for the future through redesigning and looking at materials science, making things out of different materials, cycling of materials. But also, one thing that we see is that there's a massive economic opportunity which we need to unlock, and we need an economy that can run in the long term. So I think it's out there already. It's the thinking that needs to change. It's the seizing of that opportunity, and businesses are getting on board with that already, and we find the feedback from schools and classrooms when we work with young people around the idea of the circular economy is absolutely amazing. Whilst we were working on the design and technology materials, we were piloting and testing some materials up in the north of England. And there was one student who'd been helping out with the piloting and testing, and he went up to his teacher and he said, sir, when I did GCSE D&T, I couldn't think of anything to design. I love D&T, but everything had been done. But now I've learned about the circular economy, doing his A-levels, everything I see I want to redesign. And it's that total switch of, actually, what can I do to, everything's out there to do. The faster we do this, the better.
And you've spoken about businesses and what businesses can do. Is there anything that people, like individuals, can do to help with the circular economy to sort of maybe get things kick-started in their homes and their communities?
I think where we chose to work within the foundation was within education, so young people could see there was this opportunity, and they could see this coherent framework for rethinking and redesign, and then in the business space, because there's a real need to evolve businesses from linear to circular. We chose not to work directly with the general public, but we'd go either through education or through business. And I think many people say, do the general public need to know what the circular economy is? Actually, maybe not. And if you look at the results from our report, the economic report, we took a washing machine as one of the case studies. If you take your current washing machine of today, that's your kind of basic machine, relatively cheap to buy, it'll cost you about 27 cents a wash. If you take a circular economy machine, which is designed for disassembly, it's remanufacturable, it's upgradable, it's basically your high-end machine of today, but souped up a little bit further, that will only cost you 12 cents a wash. So given the opportunity of having a machine that costs you 27 cents a wash and will not last that long because it's not designed to, because the manufacturer only makes money when they sell another machine in that linear system, which is just the state of business, how things are, and it's just how things have evolved. That's one option. But if you could get a better machine for less than half the price, that's not designed to, not designed to break, but doesn't break because it can be repaired and remanufactured, which would you rather have? Would you take the 12 cents a washing machine that's better, or would you pay far more for a washing machine that's going to break after several years? And when you see those two options, actually, do you need to know that's a circular economy machine? Not really. You just get a better service for less. The same with the light commercial vehicle example that we looked at within the report. The light commercial vehicle, when you remanufacture it, can be remanufactured by the manufacturer. It can then leave the factory looking like a new car with the same warranty as a new car, but at half the cost of a new car, and 3 times the profit can be made by the manufacturer. So you get a car for half price with the same warranty as a new car, and they make more profit. So actually it means they can continue to exist, and you get a better product. So when you look at that, do you need to know that's a circular economy car? Not really. It just makes sense. It makes sense economically, and you get a better product.
Absolutely. I've just had an email in to let you know that Maximus is watching, and he says, nice answer. So you've been officially endorsed by Maximus. That's something to add to your CV. This all sounds really, really important and really interesting, but I'm sure you're aware that most people know you through your sailing. So of course we have had a few questions in about your own sort of personal journey. Jennifer Ludgate, she's teaching a Year 9 class about challenges, and she wanted to ask you, in your sailing career, whether the most difficult challenges you faced were physical or mental, and how did you overcome them?
Interesting one. I'd say you can't say that it's not a physical challenge to sail a 75-foot boat around the world, because it was phenomenally challenging, but you can train for that. So I trained a huge amount before setting off around the world, as much as I possibly could, 6 out of every 7 days a week in the gym, because that's something you can put in the time and you can prepare for it. The mental challenge is harder, because all you can do to prepare to go around the world is to try and think of everything that could go wrong before it does, both before you leave and whilst you're at sea. And the hardest thing mentally when you go around the world is that you're at sea for 3 months. You cannot at any time switch your brain off. There is not one moment when you can put your head down on your beanbag outside or wherever you're sleeping and say, right now I'm going to sleep for 10 minutes. Because you don't know. You might not be able to sleep at all. Maybe you'll get 20 minutes. In a rare case you'll get an hour. In a very rare case you'll get 2 hours. And actually only once in 3 months did I sleep for 3 hours, just once. So you're sleeping in really small chunks. So I'd say the mental aspects are very, very challenging. Because if the weather's unstable, if the winds are going up and down, you can't sleep. It's too dangerous. The boat can capsize in 5 seconds if you don't let the sails go, if it gets windy and you get gusts. So I'd say the mental was harder than the physical. Although the physical was hard, the mental is so unpredictable. And sleep deprivation is used as a torture, and it's pretty much that situation when you're at sea. You're out there, and whatever's thrown at you, you have to deal with. And if you can't sleep, you can't sleep. It's as simple as that.
And we've had a question in from James, who's aged 9. He said, do you get lonely when you were sailing on your own? And he wants to know if you ended up talking to yourself a lot.
Hi James. You don't really get lonely, because when you're out at sea, you're so busy sailing the boat, checking the weather, looking at what's going on around you, making sure that you've checked the oil in the engine, making sure that all the systems are working properly, making sure your batteries are charged, making sure that there's no wear on the boat, that nothing's about to break. Actually, really, you don't have the chance to get lonely. You're so busy, and you know before you go, you'll be on your own for 3 months. That's absolutely just how it is. So not really lonely. And do I talk to myself? Not really. I talk to the boat sometimes. I nicknamed the boat Moby, and I often gave Moby a little pat saying, well done, once you got through a big storm.
I guess it's when the boat starts to talk back that you need to worry.
Yeah. Luckily, the boat didn't talk back. But she brought me home safely, so she was obviously very grateful for my comments.
And Claire says, just ask why you took up sailing, what led to you taking up sailing. She read that you were inspired by the book Swallows and Amazons. Is that true?
I sail because when I was 4 years old, I had the opportunity to go sailing, and it was down on the southeast coast with my nan, my grandma, my mum's mum, and my elder brother. And I will never ever forget the feeling of freedom that I felt when those sails were hoisted for the first time. As a kid, it was the greatest sense of freedom I could ever imagine, and I never lost that. I absolutely loved it, and it was that carried me through school, through saving my school dinner money, through to leaving school at 17 and becoming a sailing instructor, and it just led on and on and on. It was that feeling of freedom, the amazing feeling that you can step on a boat, right outside the window here on the Isle of Wight, and you can sail that boat to Australia, or to America, or to a little island in the Southern Ocean called South Georgia, or to Antarctica. Suddenly the world opens up through the water, and that really, really fascinated me.
And Clary B says, has there ever been a time in your sailing career where you didn't do as well as you hoped? And what are your tips for overcoming failure or taking positives from a difficult situation?
Through a difficult situation, I always try to see through to the other side. I think that's what we've done with the foundation and with the idea of the circular economy, is actually, so if we have some challenges now, what does success look like? Where are we trying to get to? And if you're in a storm, you're trying to stay alive and you're trying to get to the other side. If you're trying to get around the world, you're also focused on the finish line, because if you ever think you won't get to the finish line, you probably won't. You always have to stay focused on what you're trying to get to. So I'd say that element is really key, is look through the other side and just focus on where you're trying to get to.
And we've had a question in from someone who hasn't left their name, but I can imagine the answer to this already, but can you imagine a time when sailing doesn't form a significant part of your life?
Right now. I quit sailing because I created the foundation, and right now I sail 1/100th of what I used to sail before, so it's still a part of my life, but never ever ever did I ever think that I would stop doing what I loved to create a foundation and do what I'm doing. But I've never come across anything more important than what the foundation's doing.
Do you ever miss it, the sailing?
I miss it hugely, and leaving it was the hardest decision I've ever made. To actually say, that's it, it's so final. Yeah. I'm not someone who can do two things. I'm someone who gives everything they have, and when I left sailing for foundation to create the team and to work around this subject, that was it. It was a real change of course, and it was an incredibly hard decision to make, because I absolutely hadn't had enough of sailing. I could have sailed around the world forever, but it mattered more, and I've got no regrets. And we have an amazing team here at the foundation, and we're doing extraordinary things, and I think we all love every minute of it, so no regrets. But so yes, I do miss it.
Did you ever think that you might go back to it in time?
There's no real finish line to what we're doing here at the foundation. Every around the world journey, every transatlantic journey has a real clear finish line. But when you look at a world economy, and you look at shifting a world economy from a linear to a circular one, and us playing whatever small part we can in that, there's no real finish line. That's going to be a long haul, but I'm sure it's going to be every bit as exciting of a journey as sailing around the world.
How difficult was it for you to adapt to that change, that knowing that I will be at X time and that will be my finish? Was it difficult to adapt to not having a finishing line, not having a sort of a deadline almost? I
guess the hardest thing is pacing what you're doing, because when you pace yourself for around the world race, at that point when you get to the finish line, it all stops. And actually with what we're doing here, it doesn't all stop, and it can't really all stop, because you're doing something which is ongoing, and it gets more and more exciting, and you do more and more projects, and you have more and more conversations, and it's absolutely phenomenal. I never thought I'd be having the kind of conversations that I'm having today when I was at school. Not in a million years I was going to sail around the world. So there's a real exciting and dynamic aspect to what we're doing here at the foundation, which you never do want to stop, but the pacing of yourself is quite hard.
And you sound like you were very focused from a very early age. Was there any other path that you think you might have taken if sailing had turned out not to be for you?
The what ifs of life. I don't know, when I went through school, I grew up in the countryside, as far away from the sea as you can get in the UK, so I was the unlikely person that was ever going to sail around the world, to say the least. And I never thought when I went through school that there was any way to sail around the world other than to go out, to go to university, to get a job, to earn enough money to one day buy a boat and go around the world. That was the only way I could ever see. And so I was trying to be a vet. And I was trying to get the results that I needed at school, and I worked with the vets to help out every Saturday for 3 years, and I went through that process. And then 3 months before my A-levels, I got glandular fever. And everything stopped, like it does when you're ill, and I was flat for a month. And it was good thinking time. But at the time you think that's it. You think, oh, that's everything gone, you know, and I'll never manage this, and I'll never manage this, and what am I going to do? It's A-levels, it's everything. And in fact, it was the best thing that could have ever happened, because it made me stop and think. At a time when there was a programme on the TV in the early hours of the morning about a race called Whitbread Round the World Race. And I borrowed my nan's video recorder and recorded this programme about sailing around the world, and watched the programme the following day, and there were guys and girls racing around the world who were doing it through sponsorship. They'd gone out and they'd found funds to go and race around the world, and I lay there on the sofa and I said, that's what I'm going to do. And that was it. I went back to finish my A-levels, but immediately after I was gone away at a sailing school, learning all I could, and I was learning more than I felt I'd ever learned in my life, asking so many questions about how to sail, how to fix an engine, how to fix myself, how does this whole thing work. It was absolutely phenomenal. So I guess, yes, there was another path there. I never realised there was any other way to sail, but once I did, I was on it. But life's a funny thing. I didn't think I'd be doing this.
And you've mentioned that a couple of times. You didn't see yourself doing this, and sort of sailing was all you wanted to do. When people sort of look back at your career and your achievements, what do you hope that they prioritise? Would you prefer to be known as Ellen MacArthur the sailor or Ellen MacArthur the circular economist?
I just hope that people remember me as Ellen, who was a nice person and did the right thing.
That sounds like a lovely note to leave it on. All that's left for me to do is to thank Dame Ellen for joining us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming to the Isle of Wight.
That's quite all right. It's quite delightful. I thoroughly recommend it. You can join us again next week at 1 p.m. on Wednesday, I believe. We'll be talking to film producer Stephen Woolley, or it might be Thursday. I checked the website. It's tes.co.uk/webchats. And yes, hopefully talk to you all soon. Bye now.
Bye. Thanks.